From coast to coast, Canada's immigration system is experiencing one of the most dramatic overhauls in recent history. Canada's shocking immigration rules for 2025 are now in full effect, and these changes could reshape the future of hundreds of thousands of temporary residents, international students, and even permanent residents. The government has introduced stricter rules with the goal of balancing population growth, housing demands, and labor market shortages. But these adjustments are leaving many people anxious about their future in the country. Families who have lived here for years are uncertain if they can stay. Students fear they may have to return home before completing their plans, and foreign workers are questioning whether their contracts will still hold value in this new landscape. These new regulations have raised questions such as who qualifies to stay, who may be forced to leave, and what does this mean for the long-term vision of Canadian immigration? This is not just about policy changes. This is about real lives being disrupted. Before we go deep into each major change and examine how they can directly impact your life or the lives of people you know, make sure to like and subscribe to this channel so you can stay informed about every critical immigration update coming out of Canada. Number 1. Stricter temporary visa renewals. A major transformation in 2025 has occurred in the way Canada handles temporary visa renewals. Previously, international students, temporary foreign workers, and long-term visitors found the renewal process relatively manageable, with extensions often granted as long as applicants met basic requirements. However, under the new rules, renewal is no longer guaranteed. Applicants are now required to provide comprehensive evidence of their financial capacity to support themselves without burdening public resources. Immigration officers are scrutinizing applications to ensure there are legitimate reasons for wanting to stay longer. This includes providing proof of stable income, a verified job contract, or a valid academic plan for students. For many, the most difficult change is the government's new stance on multiple renewals. Those who have extended their stay several times in the past may now be seen as over-relying on temporary permits, which can result in rejection. For example, international students who have finished their studies but have not yet transitioned to a permanent residency pathway may struggle to get their status extended. Temporary workers who depend on yearly contract renewals are also at risk if their employer cannot provide clear documentation that their position cannot be filled by a Canadian citizen or permanent resident. This has left thousands wondering if they will be forced to leave as soon as their current permits expire. Number 2. Reduced Post-Graduation Work Permit (PGWP) eligibility. The Post-Graduation Work Permit (PGWP) has traditionally been one of the most important tools for international students who plan to settle in Canada permanently. It allowed them to gain Canadian work experience, a critical requirement for many permanent residency programs. However, in 2025, the PGWP landscape has changed dramatically. Only graduates from programs that are deemed to meet Canada's labor market demands will now be eligible for the PGWP. This means students enrolled in short-term, non-accredited, or low-demand programs may no longer qualify. The government has published a list of prioritized fields, which include healthcare, engineering, skilled trades, and certain IT-related programs. Fields that are oversaturated or not contributing significantly to economic growth have been excluded, leaving many graduates stranded. Another major blow is the reduction in the length of work permits for some programs. Previously, students completing programs of 2 years or more were automatically eligible for a 3-year PGWP. Under the 2025 rules, many will now receive only 1 to 2 years, depending on their field of study and the province in which they studied. This shorter time frame makes it more challenging for graduates to gain enough work experience and collect enough points for permanent residency. Many students who made significant financial and personal sacrifices to study in Canada are now reconsidering their future, as the window to establish themselves has become much narrower. Number 3. Tightened pathways to permanent residency (PR). One of the biggest shocks in 2025 is the recalibration of permanent residency pathways. Canada has long been known for its accessible immigration routes through express entry, provincial nominee programs (PNPS), and family reunification schemes. However, the government is now shifting towards a more selective approach that prioritizes candidates with immediate economic impact potential. Express entry draws have raised their minimum comprehensive ranking system (CRS) scores significantly, meaning fewer people qualify through the traditional skilled worker route. Provinces are also narrowing their PNP requirements, focusing heavily on professions in critical shortage areas. For many foreign workers and students who were banking on these programs, this means longer waiting periods, uncertain eligibility, and in some cases, complete disqualification. Family sponsorship has also seen new financial threshold requirements. Sponsors now need to prove a higher minimum income level to bring their spouses, children, or parents to Canada. This has put additional strain on families who have already been separated for years. The overall message is clear. Canada is shifting its focus from quantity to quality, and anyone without strong language skills, relevant work experience, or a job offer in an in-demand field will find it increasingly difficult to transition from temporary status to permanent residency. Number 4. Increased compliance checks and deportation orders. The enforcement side of immigration is also seeing a strong push in 2025. Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada, IRCC, and the Canada Border Services Agency, CBSA, have been granted expanded authority to carry out compliance checks on individuals with temporary status. This includes surprise inspections for workplaces employing foreign workers, random checks on students' enrollment status, and stricter monitoring of individuals on visitor visas suspected of overstaying. If discrepancies or violations are found, deportation orders are being issued at a much faster rate than in previous years. Overstaying a visa, working without authorization, or failing to comply with study permit conditions can now lead to removal proceedings with very little room for appeal. Many people who have lived in Canada for years, often with families and stable lives, are finding themselves on the brink of being deported for administrative oversights or paperwork delays. This increased level of enforcement reflects the government's attempt to tighten control over the growing number of temporary residents, which had surged in recent years due to international recruitment and labor shortages. Number 5. Cap on temporary resident numbers. Perhaps one of the most impactful policies introduced is the 2025 cap on temporary residents. For the first time in decades, Canada has set a hard limit on how many international students, temporary workers, and visitors can remain in the country at once. This policy was introduced in response to the mounting housing crisis, infrastructure strain, and increasing pressure on public services in major cities like Toronto, Vancouver, and Montreal. The cap has forced provinces to reduce their intake targets dramatically. Educational institutions are being told to limit international student admissions. Employers are restricted in hiring new temporary foreign workers, and visa approvals for visitors from high-demand countries have been scaled back. Those already in the country under temporary permits may not be eligible for renewal if the cap is reached, creating a scenario where many will be required to leave even if they wish to stay longer. This cap is reviewed annually, meaning it can fluctuate based on economic and housing conditions, but in 2025, it has already caused significant backlogs and forced exits. Students unable to secure PGWPS, workers not receiving contract renewals, and visitors whose extensions are denied are among the first affected. Number 6. Stricter language proficiency requirements. In 2025, one of the more unexpected shifts has been the tightening of language proficiency requirements for both work and permanent residency pathways. Applicants now face higher minimum benchmarks in English and French testing, with special emphasis placed on professional communication skills. Previously, many candidates could qualify with intermediate-level scores, but now the required levels have increased, leaving thousands of applicants ineligible despite having lived and worked in Canada for years. This impacts not only new arrivals, but also those renewing their permits or applying for PR under programs such as Express Entry or the provincial nominee programs. Temporary foreign workers in low-wage or semi-skilled positions are especially vulnerable, as they often lack the language training resources available to higher-income workers or students. Without meeting these new benchmarks, their applications for renewal or permanent residency are at risk of being rejected, potentially forcing them to leave the country even after years of contribution. Number 7. Tightened rules for family reunification. Family reunification has historically been one of the pillars of Canada's immigration policy, but the 2025 rules have added new obstacles. The sponsorship income threshold has been raised significantly, meaning many sponsors must now show a much higher annual income to bring their spouses, children, or parents into the country. Additionally, processing times have lengthened, with applications now subject to more rigorous financial and background checks. Parents and grandparents, who often relied on the SuperVisa program, are finding it harder to qualify, as new rules now require stronger medical insurance proof and stricter income verification from their sponsors. Families that were planning to reunite after years of separation are now facing uncertainty, with many forced to either postpone or abandon their plans. This change is particularly devastating for communities that have historically relied on family-based migration to build stable lives in Canada. Number 8. Limited pathways for refugees and asylum seekers. Refugees and asylum seekers are also facing a more constrained environment in 2025. Canada, known for its humanitarian approach, has now imposed annual caps and stricter criteria on who can claim asylum. Claims based on economic hardship alone are being dismissed at much higher rates, and those unable to provide strong evidence of persecution or immediate danger are at risk of deportation. The backlog of asylum cases has grown, and expedited removals are now a key part of the government's approach to managing these numbers. Many individuals who arrived in hopes of finding safety and starting anew are now being asked to leave before their cases are even fully processed. Advocacy groups have criticized this shift, saying it undermines Canada's long-standing reputation as a safe haven for the vulnerable. Number 9. Provincial autonomy in immigration quotas. In 2025, provinces have been granted greater autonomy to manage their own immigration quotas and policies. While this was meant to better align local labor markets with immigration needs, it has created a patchwork of rules across the country. Some provinces, facing housing shortages or infrastructure strain, have drastically reduced their intake of temporary residents and PR nominations. Others with more labor demand have opened up slightly, but the uneven policies have left many immigrants uncertain about where they can settle, or whether they should move to another province to improve their chances. This has led to a wave of interprovincial migration among temporary residents, as students and workers attempt to position themselves in provinces with more favorable rules. However, this mobility is not always easy or affordable, leaving many stuck in regions where their opportunities have suddenly vanished. Number 10. Backlog and processing delays, leading to forced departures. One of the less discussed but equally devastating consequences of the 2025 rules is the massive backlog in application processing. Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada, IRCC, has been inundated with a record number of applications, appeals, and renewal requests due to policy changes. As a result, processing times have stretched far beyond their normal limits. For many, this delay means their legal status expires before their renewal or PR application is even reviewed. Without a bridging permit or approved extension, they are forced to leave the country to avoid overstaying their visa. Students, skilled workers, and even families in transition are finding themselves caught in this bureaucratic trap, leaving Canada not because they want to, but because the system could not process their paperwork in time. Canada's immigration system in 2025 is at a crossroads. These new rules are reshaping the lives of thousands, forcing many to reconsider their future in the country and leaving families, workers, and students in a state of uncertainty. For some, it may mean leaving behind jobs, homes, and communities they have built over years, while for others, it's a race against time to meet the new criteria. If you or someone you know is affected by these changes, staying informed is more critical than ever. Policies are evolving, and opportunities can appear just as quickly as they disappear. Make sure to like and subscribe to this channel so you never miss the latest updates on immigration news, policy changes, and expert insights that could impact your life every day.